It was a sunny morning in one of Austin's finer neighborhoods. Strolling along these polished streets was Nancy, a 60-year-old woman. This morning, she was out for her usual walk, breathing in the fresh air and letting her mind wander. Her favorite thing about these walks was the peace they brought her, a break from the hustle of daily errands, doctor appointments, and all the things that kept her busy. Today, she carried her purse over her shoulder. It wasn't flashy, just a worn leather bag that had seen years of her life's daily routines. Inside, she kept things that mattered most to her: photos of her grandkids, whom she doted on endlessly, her phone, always waiting for a call or text from her kids, and a small amount of cash, enough to pick up a few groceries later. Nancy wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, just another peaceful stroll. But as she reached a quieter corner, she noticed a young man on a bicycle heading her way. He looked out of place among the well-dressed walkers and clean-cut lawns. A small knot formed in her stomach. Before she knew it, the man was right in front of her, and with a rough yank, he reached for her purse. Nancy gasped, her heart racing, but her instincts kicked in. Her purse held pieces of her life, memories and connections she couldn't let go. She wasn't about to let him just take it from her, not without a fight. She pulled back, clutching it tightly, her eyes blazing as she wrestled with him. "No!" she shouted, her voice trembling but firm. Onlookers began to gather, but none moved to help. A few people exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do. Someone whispered, "He might be armed," while others took a step back or hurried on, eyes averted. Fear and hesitation filled the air as everyone seemed to silently agree. Better safe than sorry. A couple even ducked into a nearby doorway, eager to avoid the scene unfolding. "Let go!" the young man hissed, trying to pull the bag from her grip. Nancy dug her heels into the pavement, refusing to give up. She couldn't bear the thought of losing not only the money, but the photos, the phone, all those pieces that kept her connected to her family. She looked around, hoping someone, anyone, might step in. But all she saw were averted eyes, people who'd turned their backs, too worried about their own safety to step in. Right at that moment, Elon Musk was driving past, with his mind buried in thoughts of the big meeting ahead. Today was supposed to be all about the new Tesla Cybercab, the fully autonomous robotaxi that had no steering wheel, no pedals, nothing to remind you it was once controlled by human hands. They had big plans for it, aiming to roll it out by 2026, with the starting price just under $30,000. He was already running through the key points he'd need to discuss with the team: logistics, pricing, the production schedule. This car could change everything. But as he slowed to a stop at the light, something on the sidewalk caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just another pedestrian scene in this wealthy neighborhood. Then he saw the commotion, a young man tugging at a purse and an older woman holding on for dear life. She was fighting back, refusing to let go of her bag, her face strained with determination and fear. For a split second, he froze, processing what was happening. The woman was clutching her purse like her life depended on it. And that's when he felt it, that sick feeling in his stomach. She reminded him of his mother, May. She is tough, too, someone who never backed down from a challenge, someone who would fight to protect the things that mattered to her. Elon's jaw tightened as he pictured May in that woman's place, battling to keep something precious while strangers stood by just watching. He glanced around, noticing the other people standing nearby, but no one was stepping in. Some looked away, others backed off, and a few simply stood there, frozen. The sight made him feel a mix of anger and disappointment. Here he was, in one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Austin, and no one was brave enough to step in to help a woman who clearly needed it. He knew he had somewhere to be. The meeting at the Tesla office was critical. They were on a tight schedule, and his presence was expected. But none of that mattered right now. All he could think of was how he'd feel if it were his mom in that situation. She'd always taught him that no amount of success or responsibility should ever come before doing the right thing. And right now, the right thing was crystal clear. With a deep breath, he made his decision. He pulled over to the side, the meeting momentarily forgotten. His heart pounded as he stepped out of the car and started walking toward the woman and the thief. But after just a few steps, he broke into a run, his eyes locked on the young man gripping the woman's purse. Elon knew he didn't have a plan. He wasn't exactly sure what he'd do when he got there, but he knew he couldn't just stand by. The young man turned around just in time to see Elon sprinting toward him. At first, he didn't recognize him. He just saw a tall, determined guy coming after him, clearly ready for a showdown. And the young man was not used to anyone standing up to him, especially here, where most people preferred to look the other way. He felt a jolt of panic. He hadn't planned for anyone to actually interfere. This was supposed to be a quick, easy hit. He glanced down, desperate to grab the handlebars of his bike and get out of there. But as he did, he shot a furious glare at the woman who was still clutching her side, wincing from their struggle over the purse. In that moment, anger flared inside him, a bitterness that she hadn't just given up her bag like everyone else he'd targeted before. Without a second thought, he swung his arm and shoved her, hard, as if to punish her for daring to resist him. The woman crumpled, curling up in pain on the sidewalk, her face contorted in a mixture of shock and hurt. Some of the onlookers gasped, a few covered their mouths, but none dared to get too close. They still watched from a safe distance, afraid of getting mixed up in whatever was happening. But that was all Elon needed to see. He didn't have time to check on her or stop and help her up. His instincts told him he had to act fast. He wasn't about to let this guy get away. As soon as this evil brute punched a 60-year-old woman, Elon Musk appeared right behind him and did the unthinkable. With a burst of determination, Elon picked up his pace, and as he ran, he shouted, "Hey, stop! You're not going anywhere!" His voice was loud and forceful, enough to startle the young man who was now frantically trying to pedal away. Elon's shout drew more attention, and a few people who'd been standing nearby recognized him. They hesitated only a moment before joining in, jogging alongside Elon. Elon kept calling out, and it seemed to add to the thief's panic. The young man was desperate to put as much distance between himself and Elon as possible, but he couldn't resist the urge to glance back, to see just how close his pursuer was. The split second he turned his head was all it took for him to lose control of the bike. He looked over his shoulder, his eyes widening, as he saw Elon only a few strides behind. It was then that he veered too far to the side and lost his balance, crashing headfirst into a street pole. With a loud clang, the bike crumpled beneath him, and he tumbled to the ground in a heap, dazed and winded. Elon came to a halt, breathing heavily, but with a look of satisfaction on his face. He wasn't one for grand gestures, but seeing this guy taken down after hurting that woman and trying to get away felt like a small victory. The young man lay on the ground, still dazed from his fall, while a few of the onlookers who had chased after him gathered around. One of them took out his phone, thumb hovering over the call button to call the police. But before he could press it, Elon stepped forward, placing a hand over the man's phone. "Not yet," Elon said, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. The people around him looked confused, and the young man on the ground blinked, trying to figure out what was going on. Elon glanced over to where Nancy was sitting on the sidewalk, leaning against the wall with a couple of people checking on her. She was breathing heavily, and it was clear the blow had left her weak. Her face was pale, her eyes glazed with pain. But there was still that stubborn resilience in her expression. Elon's gaze hardened as he looked down at the guy who had just tried to hurt her. This wasn't just about a stolen purse anymore. This was about teaching him something he'd never forget. "Here's what's going to happen," Elon said, pulling his own phone out of his pocket and holding it out toward the young man. "You're going to call the police yourself." The young man's eyes widened and he shook his head, his hands inching backward, trying to scoot away. "No way! I'm not calling the cops on myself," he muttered, with panic in his voice. He looked around, hoping someone might speak up in his defense, but all he saw were stern, silent faces. No one was going to help him. Elon knelt down beside him, his face calm, but his eyes intense. "Listen, you don't get a choice here. Either you call them, or I make sure you'll never forget what happened today. And trust me, I have the resources to make sure that happens." Elon's words were quiet, almost casual, but there was a steeliness to them that left no room for argument. The young man swallowed, his gaze flickering between Elon's phone and the determined look in Elon's eyes. He knew who Elon Musk was now. This was not a person you wanted to cross, especially when he was clearly serious about what he was saying. With a shaky hand, he took Elon's phone and stared at it like it was a weapon. "Dial," Elon instructed, and the young man reluctantly punched in the numbers for 911. The phone rang, and after a beat, a calm voice answered, "911, what's your emergency?" The young man hesitated, but Elon gave him a sharp nod and he stammered, I'd like to report an incident. I tried to steal someone's purse and things got out of hand." There was a pause on the other end, and then the operator asked, "Sir, are you saying you're confessing to a crime?" The young man glanced at Elon, who crossed his arms, waiting. He took a shaky breath. "Yes, I tried to steal from an older woman. I pushed her too. She's hurt." His voice was barely above a whisper now. The operator responded quickly, "Where are you located, sir?" The young man looked to Elon, who gave him the address. Reluctantly, he repeated it, his voice breaking as he finished. The call ended, and he handed the phone back to Elon, defeated and pale. "You don't get to do this and just walk away," Elon said quietly. "You might not care now, but you're going to remember this. And next time, maybe you'll think twice." The sound of sirens started in the distance, growing louder, and the young man sat there, resigned to his fate. Elon stood back, watching as the officers pulled up, ready to make sure justice was served in a way no one would soon forget. After that, he walked over to Nancy, who was still seated on the sidewalk, looking a bit shaken, but holding herself together. She was watching him, her eyes full of gratitude and disbelief, as if she couldn't quite process everything that had just happened. Elon knelt beside her, offering a gentle smile. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Nancy nodded, though she was clearly still feeling the impact of the scuffle. "I think so. Thanks to you," she replied, her voice wavering just a bit. She looked him over, and suddenly recognition dawned on her face. She blinked, her eyes widening. "Wait, you're Elon Musk?" Elon gave a modest nod, looking slightly amused. "Last time I checked," he replied with a light-hearted smile. Nancy shook her head, still in shock. "I don't know what to say. You saved me. I never thought someone like you would ever stop for someone like me. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stepped in." Elon reached out, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Anyone should have done it. I just happened to be here. And you fought pretty hard yourself. You didn't make it easy for him." He chuckled, clearly impressed. Nancy let out a shaky laugh, glancing down at her scuffed-up purse. "I just couldn't let him take it. My grandkids' pictures, my phone, all of it. I wasn't ready to lose that." Elon nodded, understanding. Those things are important. Sometimes people forget it's not just about money. It's about the little things that keep us connected to the people we love. They shared a warm smile, and for a moment, it felt as if they'd known each other for years. Nancy felt a strange comfort in his presence, as if she'd been talking to an old friend rather than one of the most famous people in the world. Elon glanced at his watch, knowing he had to go. "Well, I'd better get going, but take care of yourself, okay?" Nancy nodded, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "Thank you truly. I'll never forget this." As Elon returned to his car and slipped back into the flow of his day, heading to his meeting as if nothing extraordinary had happened, the people around him remained rooted in place, still processing what they'd just witnessed. Passers-by stood in amazement, replaying the sight of the world's richest man sprinting full speed down the street after a thief, all to help a woman he didn't even know. That picture of Elon, a man running with all his might, not for fame or glory, but simply to protect someone vulnerable, was something they'd hardly be able to forget. What would you have done if you had caught this guy who hit Nancy? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.